Hello everyone, this is Braden from Braden Productions, and today I guess we're doing something a little different today. So this is a game I don't think I've ever played on any of the channels before. It's called a Panzer General, and I'm sorry if the footage isn't as high quality as it usually is, because this game is older than me. It is like, I want to say it came out in like 1995, and if you need a brief explanation as to like what this game is, um, imagine like the ancient ancestor to World Conqueror 3. Okay, that's basically what this game is in terms of the gameplay. There's a few things that are different, and I'll discuss those here in a minute, but the same core gameplay essentially. You deploy your troops, you attack the enemy, you take the objectives, same core gameplay mechanics. That's why I say it's like the ancient ancestor. And also, I must say, not too happy right now because I have to give this whole spiel again because I was a big dummy and forgot to unmute my mic the first time I tried to record this. So yeah, I sat here for like 15 minutes talking to myself, and whoever's listening in the other room is like thinking I'm like a crazy person right now. So that's just great. But never mind that. I guess I'll just give a few quick takeaways, I guess, in terms of, what I like about this game, how it differs from a game like World Conqueror 3. So, one thing that I like in this game is that there's a lot more diversity in terms of, like, the unit types. Like, you got, like, your anti-air, like, physical anti-air you move on the map. I know you have, like, the anti-air gun in World Conqueror 3. That's not what I'm talking about. You have like the anti-tank, I think that's pretty sweet to have like a gun, or I guess like a vehicle that's like super effective against the tanks. I think that's real neat, not just the artillery, and in this game, like, in like game like World Conqueror 3, how you could like order like your strafing runs or the bombing runs from the cities. This game's a little different, and the planes are like physical units you move on the map, and you could just like move your bombers in and completely like wreck the enemy. If they're like sitting somewhere trying to be fortified, you could just, rain bombs upon them with your bombers that you move around the map. Though you got to be careful of the enemy fighters because they'll shoot down your planes. And that's why we got A, you got to make your own fighters. B, that's why we got the anti-air guns, right? But anyhow, yeah, I like that about this game, how there's a lot more diversity in terms of the units, and I feel like it's definitely a little more challenging in terms of the strategy, and I think maybe part of why I think this game is more challenging than, like, say, like, World Conqueror 3 is just because I've been playing World Conqueror 3 for so long. I've been playing it for almost a decade at this point. I think I started back in, like, 2017. I don't know when my earliest World Conqueror 3 video is, now that I think about it. Yeah, I know someone in the comments is going to say, oh, it was like December 2018. No, that's just the earliest one I have public, alright? I'm pretty sure I made World Conqueror 3 videos before that, and there were like videos that like Ethan and I made way back in the day that never got published. Anyway, that's a whole tangent, that's not really relevant. My point being, maybe part of the reason I find this game more challenging is just because of how experienced I am with World Conqueror 3 to the point where that's what I'm used to. But no, I think there are differences here that make this game more challenging. Like I was saying before with the diversity of the unit types. You don't want to approach the anti-air, the anti-tank guns with a tank, alright? That's, it kind of says in the name, anti-tank. It doesn't end well, alright? That's just one example, While in World Conqueror 3, it's kind of straightforward. You got your tanks, you got your artillery. If you're a high enough tech level, you could pretty much get through anything. In this game, you gotta think about it a lot more. This game, I know it's not that shocking when you realize the game's called Panzer General. It kind of implies what the game wants you to do, but it very much incentivizes just using blitzkrieg tactics. Alright, you just maneuver yourself as fast as possible, surround the enemy's strong points, you just gotta keep moving in this game. You gotta go fast. But at the same time, you gotta be cautious. It's kind of a hard thing to balance, I know this sounds like a contradiction, but it's like you gotta go as fast as possible while going as slow as possible at the same time. Basically, you just gotta make sure your force is well-rounded. You should have, like, your infantry, your tanks, your anti-air, your anti-tank, your artillery, all this stuff. And then obviously your planes too, which aren't as important in these first couple missions because Poland barely has any. any at all. Like in that mission I just beat here, looking at the screen, I don't think they had a single plane, but in this next one, I think they had like one fighter. So that element isn't as important, but you still gotta keep a well-rounded force. It's harder because there's a lot more you have to keep track of. And here's another thing I think is a little cool about this game that you don't really have in like World Conqueror 3. So in World Conqueror 3, it's like you have like Axis 1, all right? And you beat that and then you unlock Axis 2, but it's like as far as the gameplay goes, it may as well be a completely different, campaign, right? You're completely different set of units, completely different enemies, but that's like the next mission. Here the campaign is like all, interconnected. If you do good in the previous campaign and you keep a lot of your units, they stay alive, you can redeploy them in the next mission, and those actually carry over. And I think that's really cool, as opposed to a game like World Conqueror 3, where it's like you're essentially starting from scratch, or whatever units they give you to start with every single time. Alright? Like, I just think that's a pretty cool difference, too. And, I'm sorry if my commentary isn't that great, because it's kind of hard for me to commentate in terms of specifically what's going on right now in the game, just because my Movie Maker preview, I can't full screen it, and it always likes to be blurry, so I'm like looking at like Yugoslav war music video level quality here. Like, maybe not that bad, I can kind of tell what's going on, but it's not the greatest. And y'all already know I'm not the best at like actually commentating on what's going on in the game anyway. But I guess other pieces of advice I'd give is like, the artillery, you definitely want to sneak up on it with like your infantry, or really your tanks too. Anything can really chew up the artillery if you get right next to it, because the enemy will use the will take full advantage of that artillery. And if, like you see up there, they're like manning the strategic points with the artillery. If you can sneak up on that and like attack from behind, you can dispose of that pretty quickly and take those points. But they will barrage you with it, so you gotta be careful. And you may notice that Poland has a lot of cavalry. I don't even think you could deploy cavalry as Germany, and it's not like, I don't know, I don't think the cavalry's terrible. It could take some hits, but it's pretty crappy compared to most of the other units, so I can understand why they don't let you deploy as Germany. And I know, like, the old saying is, like, would it be considered a saying? I don't know, I'm kind of having a brain further. Like, the narrative is kind of this idea that, like, oh, Poland, fought the German tanks with their cavalry. They ran up with their horses and fought the tanks, and that's why the Polish lost so badly. They're just these idiots, right? Who ran up with their horses against the tanks. And technically true, at least to an extent, but Germany actually had a lot of cavalry too. I gave this whole spiel the first time I recorded this, and you know what? I don't know what else I'm going to talk about, so might as well give it again. America actually had the best selection in terms of, soldiers who could easily be trained to serve as part of tank crews, because more Americans, compared to any other country in World War II, had experience driving a car. And I know that Hitler was kind of trying to fix that. How do you think Volkswagen got started? He was trying to make it so, the average German can like afford these cars or whatever. But the fact of the matter is, more Americans had experience driving. So we actually had the best selection in terms of the tank crews. And I just have to point it out because the game's called Panzer General. You play as Germany, but America was still number one. Alright? And people like to make fun of our tanks. Oh, the Sherman was so terrible against the Tiger. Number one, by the time there were a bunch of Shermans in Western Europe, not very many Tigers were in working condition, so it's like, who cares? And number two, we had better crews. Like, that's all I'm saying. America number one. Insert bald eagle screech here. As you can see, I'm kind of just trying to keep my units as like concentrated as possible in the same general area, trying to surround these two cities. Like, you got these two cities here that you have to take, and I think that one in the back is supposed to be Warsaw. the cities aren't labeled in this game, which is something that's like, I don't know, that's a little annoying. I kind of like it in World Conqueror 3 or Armchair Commander or any of these other games where it's like you kind of see where you're going in terms of the cities, but you know what? I'm good enough at geography. I can kind of approximate it. But yeah, we have to take these two cities here. So I'm just trying to launch a bit of a spearhead to surround them, and as you'll see at the end of the video, my plan does indeed work. I do win the mission, but I'll tell you what, Poland's a pretty easy, like, first couple missions, fighting Poland, And Poland's always easy in these games. It's kind of just, part of making a World War II game that Poland kind of sucks. But, it does get harder. Like, I did play one other mission before recording this narration. It's like Belgium and part of France or something like that. Like, you have to basically blitzkrieg to the English Channel. And it's a decent amount harder. Like, it's not, tear your hair out hard, but it's like, it's pretty hard compared to this. It's pretty straightforward if you know what you're doing. That's the thing about this game. If you keep your force well-rounded and you just pay attention, you should be good. Like, my problem with a lot of strategy games like this is I kind of have two modes, and neither of them are great. Alright, I have guns blazing, where I kind of just try to force my way through anything, and it doesn't really work out, because I get disintegrated or whatever, because they have really good defense. That's another thing about this game real quick. You got, like, the attack, the attack broken up, or, like, rugged defense. These things where it's like the enemy has a heightened level of defense, and your attack is worse, or it just completely stops, So, that's not always the greatest strategy. You do definitely want to maneuver yourself and be careful as to where you're going, But my other mode is, like, Union Civil War General level cautious. And I don't mean, like, the good Union Civil War generals, because there were a few good ones, right? General Grant, he was pretty decent. There's some others, but the ones where it's, like, Lincoln, like, literally, like, who was the guy, McClellan? Like, the guy Lincoln literally fired, because it's, like, he was just way too cautious to the point where he just let General Lee get away, like, every single time, basically. And there were many times where he could have just won the war, but he just didn't, alright? Because he was so cautious, he was so worried about, like, taking losses. I'm kind of that way sometimes. And look, it's not just games like this. Hearts of Iron 4, I'm the same exact way. That's why I take, like, 20 years to invade anything. At least anything big, It's just kind of how I play these games, but when you're on a strict time limit, Hearts of Iron 4, take as long as you want. Games like this, where it's like you're on a time limit, you have a certain number of turns, can't really do that. I guess I've talked enough about, just how I feel about games like this. Might as well do my usual tradition of just talking about things that have nothing to do with the video, and talk about, plans for the channel. So, I'm not sure how many of you saw the community post I did the other day, where I was just talking about, like, the future plans and whatnot. And that's all still true, And no, this is not the mystery video. The mystery video is something completely unlike anything on the channel. It's not a gaming video. It's not a mapping video. It's not a country ball animation. It's nothing like that. I won't spoil what it is, but I still have a lot of work I need to do for it. No guarantee it comes out anytime soon. But all I can say right now is that I think y'all will like it. And the Mystery Project is not the Gary Show either, alright? The Gary Show is something I do want to work on this summer. We have a few scripts already written out, and WC likes them, Matthew likes them, so I'm assuming that they're good, alright? I am not the best judge of my own work, because it's like way back in the day, I thought my really crappy old mapping videos were super good, but they really weren't, so I take my own judgment with a pinch of salt. But it's like, the bros say that the scripts are good. So our big concern right now is A, the voice acting. We have to do that at some point, and that's going to be a whole, a whole situation to try and set that up. And B, the animation. Okay, I should use quotes, animation, quote unquote, because probably just going to do like paint.net, not true animation, because number one, I'm just like, You know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Number two, I'm just really lazy and don't want to learn a new program. Like, I technically have like an old version of like Adobe Flash or whatever, but it's like I don't really feel like using it because that's a whole new program where I have to learn how to draw on it. I gotta learn like how you do the frames and whatnot. That's just something that I'm too lazy to really do. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna draw it in Paint.net like we do the country ball animations, except like a lot fancier. Um, but yeah, I'm thinking that's gonna be good. Y'all like what I do there. Like, you know, I'm just not a big fan of learning new programs. Like, it took me however long to get as good at Paint.net as I am now. You know, not that I'm particularly amazing at it, but you know, it's just the program I like to use. So that's what the Gary Show will probably be in at least a little bit. And that is it for today. It appears we're out of time. So, Braden,